The campaign took a major turn this week as the man who knew Donald Trump best in the White House called him the F word. No, not that F word, a fascist. And Kamala Harris was asked about it and she agreed. So is this the best closing argument to beat Trump? We debated it on my podcast this week, and Republican political consultant and former campaign manager Alicia Preston said she doesn't think so, but for one very specific reason. I chimed in that maybe she has a point, and maybe Kamala Harris could use that point to make Trump's fascism an effective closing argument. See what you think. He was Donald Trump's longest standing chief of staff, a full year and a half. He did inside the room, standing next to Donald Trump when Donald Trump looked at the graves of dead American soldiers, including John Kelly's son, and said, what was in it for them? What a bunch of losers and suckers. And now he's come out and said it. And this seems to be driving the conversation. Kamala Harris has picked up right on this and said, yes, this was the big thing in her press conference. Yes, Donald Trump is a fascist. So is this the closing argument? And should it be Kamala Harris's closing argument? Alicia, you're part of the target demographic here. Is this where things are heading?
First, I just want to go on record because so many of my brethren in the Republican Party are now criticizing and disparaging General John Kelly. I take great umbrage with that. John Kelly is an American hero. He's a 4-star general. I come from a military family. My father was a naval officer in the Korean War. All his brothers were in World War II. My husband served his nation in the Army. I do not stand nor sit for anyone who disparages a man who served his country with grave danger because they disagree with him politically. And if John Kelly says something and Donald Trump says something different, I'm going to go with the guy with 4 stars on his shoulder every single time when it's who I believe. Is this a closing argument? It doesn't help Donald Trump for the people who might be undecided for John Kelly to be coming out with this argument. I'm not sure this is the message, however, for Kamala Harris. If Kamala Harris wants a closing argument, it has to be the future. It has to be hope. It has to be positivity. The rest of us are going to hear about John Kelly's comments. We're going to hear that he believes Donald Trump is a fascist. Harris, she has to hone in on, again, for the very, very few people that are undecided, on giving something to sway them. They already know who Donald Trump is. She should be saying, this is what I'm going to do to make your life better. This is what I'm going to do to unite America. This is what I'm going to do in a message of hope, future positivity. Be Barack Obama. If there's any sway to be had, that's the only thing I believe that'll sway anybody. Donald Trump is a danger to the future of the democracy of the United States of America. But if I'm a middle-class American, which for the record I am, and we live on a weekly grocery budget, to presume that regular families in this country are supposed to care more or would even consider thinking more of this global threat to democracy more than their grocery prices and their ability to pay rent or make that mortgage. That's the problem.
Especially if Trump wins. We're going to look back, and among Republican leaders, we are going to look back and have to classify them as either grifters or cowards. For people who know better to fold like this, to try to explain away like this, the kind of threat and disaster that Trump represents. They're not doing it because of their deep concern for the price of eggs. They're doing it for their deep concern for themselves. People like Mitch McConnell, he said out loud, Donald Trump is crazy right after the insurrection. He said to his associates that he was praying that Jack Smith would be successful and that Donald Trump would be held accountable and pay a price. But he blinked. He blinked when he could have voted and given cover to other Republican senators who knew what a danger and a disaster and a threat Trump was. He blinked when he could have helped them all vote to keep him out of office ever again. And, Alicia, I think you're right that if it is an abstract concept like democracy versus a tangible concept like the cost of living, the abstract is going to lose. And I don't think that's an effective closing argument. I think you're right about that. I do want to make a case, though. I think it's possible that a late argument could still make a difference. I actually do think the threat of Trump is the right closing argument, but don't just say the F word. What does fascism mean? You know, John Kelly, in his interview with the New York Times, literally gave the dictionary definition to say, yep, here's the definition of fascism. Trump is a fascist, right? To most voters, it's an abstract concept that doesn't mean a lot to their lives. So if Kamala Harris is going to go there and say, this guy is a threat, make it tangible to people's lives.